Fuck.
Let's just assume I said fuck.
Hi! Folks, it's a real pleasure to introduce our next reader, Maggie Tokuda-Hall. Maggie Tokuda-Hall! Those of you who've been here before have heard me mention that among her many, many amazing attributes, she is a banshee. It's come to my attention that there's a lot of confusion on that point. What is a banshee? It's not a curse, like being a werewolf, or a species, like the fearsome mer people, or a rich person's dinner club / startup, like being a vampire. Now, being a banshee is a calling. In particular, it's a calling to just go up to the worst people, the people harming the community, doing evil in the world, and to open your mouth and to scream until they're dead. So folks, you better wish you've been good, because she's coming up right now. Without any further ado, I give you Maggie Tokuda-Hall.
Mary shifted from one foot to the other. It was a cold morning, and the wait for her bus had been long. She had not slept well the night before, pressed snooze too many times on her phone, and had to skip breakfast because of it. She'd shown up on time for her commute bus, though, and only to find that it was late. As she waited, a young guy in a hoodie cut in the line in front of her, eliciting an involuntary snake's hiss of annoyance from Mary. Hearing this, the guy turned, and Mary smiled sheepishly at him. No need to be unpleasant, she thought. Maybe he's just waiting for another bus. But he didn't get on any of the other buses. Finally, when her bus pulled up to the curb, she took her place behind the guy who'd cut her in the queue and boarded with all the other people who, categorically, worked for the same company as her and also lived in the same neighborhood as her, but with whom she had never spoken. It was a new driver. He had a long, thin neck and drove without his shoes on. He said something to Mary as he climbed. It's over. Thanks, guys. Okay, it's back. He had a long, thin neck and drove without his shoes on. He said something to Mary as he climbed up the rubber steps, something other than the usual hello, and so she pulled her earbuds out and asked if he might repeat himself. Smile, he said. She was cold, and she was tired, and she was frustrated by the long wait to get on the bus to her desk to do the work that she'd recently begun dreading. She did not feel like smiling. She was not in a smiling mood. But Mary smiled, because the driver had not so much said she should as he had shouted it, and his demand had startled her. She took her seat on the bus, put her earbuds in, and listened to a podcast instead of the furious voice in her mind that was screaming itself hoarse. The coffee she drank turned to acid in her belly as she sat through a meeting about the verbiage for a new campaign whose goal it was to announce new features of their product without calling attention to the fact that those features had not been available before. We can't use words like now, Ben said. Everyone agreed. We're not trying to boil the ocean here, but let's iterate this again before presenting it. I know, right? Rumor was Ben was up for a promotion, though Mary ignored this. It couldn't be. He'd only been at the company for a couple of months and hadn't done anything yet. She'd been with the company for 3 years already, and her understanding, which came from asking constantly if she might be considered for a promotion or a raise, was that the promotions simply did not exist, no matter their merit. Not in their department anyway, not while Ashley was still the director of synergic brand management. She'd have to be patient. After the meeting, Ben pulled her aside. You okay? He asked Mary. Not your usual bubbly self. A few of her colleagues hovered around the door, pretending not to listen, but clearly listening. Mary's cheeks blazed pink under their collective gaze. Just tired. Ben gave her a pat on the shoulder. Just relax, he said, his face broad with a smile that said, just smile, Mary. And so Mary smiled back. It didn't feel like a smile so much as it felt like a wince. They were the same age, Ben and Mary, and technically she was slightly senior to him. That voice, that furious voice, shrieked and it hissed and it shouted, and so Mary excused herself to the restroom. She sat on the toilet with her pants on for at least 10 minutes as she gathered her patience. She could not hush the voice so much as smother it beneath all the many layers and comforting blankets her imagination had to offer, and that would have to do. When she looked at her calendar and realized it was only Tuesday, she had to gulp back a sob. The meeting, in which the entire team fine-tooth combed the budget spreadsheet for errors or missing information, was coming to a close. Sorry. When Ashley stood. It was not like Ashley to stand, and so everyone knew an announcement was coming. And though they were all expectant and curious, everyone tried to master their countenance so that Ashley would not be uncomfortable. Only Ben looked comfortable, and his comfort made Mary's skin crawl with suspicion. What did he know that she didn't? Well, as many of you have already started piecing together, Ben here, well, Jim and Greg and I all agree, Ben has been doing some exemplary. Well, he's got some really great ideas, and so we're very excited to announce that Ben will now be our new director of strategic wording. All at once, the conference room. This isn't a true story. All at once, the conference room split in two. On one side were all of Mary's colleagues, who smiled wide and offered their congratulations and shook Ben's hand. On the other side was Mary, who feared that if she spoke, clouds of smoke evincing the fire of rage in her belly would be emitted, and everyone would know that she was the bitter, difficult career woman they'd been warned about by their fathers. And just as Ben looked at her expectantly, ready to receive his congratulations, Mary felt a sharp pain in the back of her skull, like she had been stabbed, but from the inside. She shot a hand to the spot to see if it were bleeding, but found instead something thick and long, cold and scaled. It slithered beneath her touch. She excused herself once again and once again ran to the bathroom. There in the long mirror over the 6 sinks under the bright white lights, Mary confirmed what she had immediately suspected but not wanted to believe. Hastily, she tapped out an email to Ashley saying that she was suddenly ill and needed to go home immediately. And she hid in the bathroom until her lift came. It would be $100 plus hour-and-a-half ride long back to the city, but she didn't care. She couldn't be in the office, and she couldn't wait for the bus, and she sure as hell couldn't look Ben in his stupid directorial face as she waited. As she sat silently in the stall, the snake that now protruded from her scalp hissed. She wrapped her scarf around her head and left her laptop and her purse at her desk, not wanting to risk being seen with her new Gorgos accessory. She was at her front door when she realized her keys were in her purse, at her desk, in Palo Alto, an hour and a half away, where Ben and Ashley waited, ready to remind her to chill out, or be patient, or to smile. In her frustration, she let go and let herself sink to her knees in supplication before the door to her building. If there was a God, one of her neighbors would step out. If there was justice, her landlord would be coming by today to finally fix the light in the hallway that constantly flickered. But these things did not happen. Instead, Mary sat on her stoop. She pulled the scarf from her head and let the snake flick its forked tongue against the afternoon air. She let the voice in her head scream without muffling it, let her anger swell like the tide at the full moon. An older white man with a large, circular, shining bald spot walked past Mary, but upon witnessing her evident unhappiness, turned back to face her. He wore a suit and tie and a smile like the 4th of July, big and booming. "Hey," he said cheerfully, "smile." Mary screamed. She screamed with the pain of 1,000 snakes that punched through her scalp, howled as her canines elongated into great fangs, shrieked as her eyes grew wide and terrible. The snakes that were now her hair hissed with her fury. Her great and horrible eyes turned to the man, and upon seeing him, turned him into stone. Distantly, she heard people shout in alarm and scatter. "Don't look at her," they cried. They didn't care. With her fury loose, finally the pain in her chest was gone, the screaming in her head was silent, the hiss of her snakes soothing like the gentle pass of waves over sand. She pushed the stone statue that had been the man to the ground, and he crumbled into a tiny million rocks, into gravel, into dust. She bent, picked up a pebble, and chucked it at a pigeon. Mary smiled.